So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's session. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on today's webinar, where we're going to be talking about returning to the workplace, 5 ways HR can minimize employee anxiety. So it's a very big topic, and equally it seems like a very popular topic, obviously something that a lot of you are kind of managing at the moment. So we hope that we can bring a lot of value to you today. So I'm joined by Zoe. We're going to do our introductions in just a moment. But before we do start, can I just get a yes in the chat box if you can hear me okay and you can see me and Zoe and the slides? Lots of yeses coming in now, which is amazing to see. We've got a lot of people on today, Zoe. How are you feeling? You know?
Yeah, excited. Nice to see everyone.
Yeah, we've got over 200 people now, guys. Amazing to see. So over 200 people live with us now to talk about obviously what seems like a very important subject. So like we say, thank you for taking the time out today's session, and we want this to be extremely valuable for you as well. So why are we talking about this today? In a recent poll undertaken by the CIPD, it was found that 44% of employees are anxious about returning to the workplace. There's a big part of me, I don't know about you, Zoe, that feels like that statistic could be a lot higher. You know, whenever we're talking about statistics of mental health, we're also talking about the stigma, right? And how many people are going to be open about feeling anxious about returning to work. But it's a huge topic that we're going to be discussing today and sharing with you 5 ways that you can help your employees too. So leading today's session is myself, Paul, the founder of Everymind at Work. I'm also someone who is a mental health speaker. I've been sharing my own personal story of mental health for the last 4 or 5 years in and outside of the workplace, sharing quite openly about my dad's suicide and how that impacted me. And the big reason why I started Everymind and we do these sessions is to try and help those that might be struggling with mental health and to try and change the current approach that we take to mental health in the workplace. So also a HR Ninjas ambassador. I know there's probably a lot of HR Ninjas in this group today. So you know, I'm here to lead the session, and then I'm joined by Zoe as well. Zoe, do you want to give you a little intro?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Zoe. I'm the head of HR for Everymind at Work. So we've been on this journey now, gosh, for just on a year now. I can't believe it. It's been a year that we've been doing this and trying to help as many people as possible. So as Paul says, you know, we're a real small but very passionate team that are looking to try and give as much value as possible and obviously reach as many people as we can to you know, to spread the word and reduce the stigma around mental health. So yeah, brilliant to see so many of you joining. So yeah, hope you enjoy this session.
And there's lots of ninja love coming in, lots of HR ninjas joining. So good to see you all here today. And like we said, you know, when it comes to mental health in the workplace, what we try and do is bring the human side to it, right? You know, how many times have we been told to leave our personal problems at home and don't bring them to the workplace? And definitely that's what we're going to be discussing today, of how do we bring mental health to the forefront, specifically in the workplace as well. So last month, if you joined our session, we were talking about Mental Health Awareness Week and what you can do. Mental Health Awareness Week starts on the 10th, so next week, so Monday. Myself, which isn't very good for my mental health, I've got 20 sessions next week. However, anytime that I can share my story and try and help people, I'll jump at the chance. And equally, we're very busy working with lots of clients. Mental Health Awareness Week, of course, is definitely one of the biggest focuses when it comes to mental health throughout the year. And we gave away a free resource in terms of a PDF that you can send your employees, as well as 5 daily emails to send. Sharon says the mental health awareness resource is fantastic, brilliant. Anita says the PDF is great. We've made sure to include it in all of our resources and be available for sharing, so thank you. Amanda says it's a fab pack. Good stuff, guys. So all you need to do is go to that link. It's a really long link. I do apologize. Sam, if you're on the call, can you just copy the link in? everymindatwork.com/mental -health-awareness-week-2021. Sam will put the link in there, guys, for you to be able to access. You can download the PDF, copy the emails, there it is, that Sam's just put in, and you can obviously utilize that to your advantage. So this week we are going to be giving away some more resources that will help you with the return to work. So stay tuned to the awards at the end of this webinar, and we'll be giving you access to them as well. So when it comes to, says the link's not working, Sam will have a little look into that and we'll sort it out. Maybe you've just bombarded it, guys, and it's right now. But if you need access to it, I can send it to you after this session for sure. So how might employees be feeling about the return to work? So I'm going to put this question out to you, and then me and Zoe are going to discuss as well. But how do you feel like your employees are feeling about the return to work? Put in the chat box, what emotions do you feel like they're experiencing? Zoe, what do you think employees are feeling right now?
Yeah, I think a whole host of emotions. I think a whole year of this now where working practices have completely been turned on their head. Employees have been afforded so much more flexibility with how they can sort of, construct their days. So I think even the thought of perhaps going back, even sort of part-time or a bit of a hybrid approach, I still that it's still going to come with a lot of trepidation around, what will the office be or the working environment, wherever it is that you've originally worked at, and just they've probably got 1,000,001 questions around, capacity and are we even allowed to come in full time, and there's going to be obviously a huge difference in those people that maybe want to return to it because for their mental health, they want that interaction, they want that face-to-face connectivity, whereas you've then got a whole host of other people that are probably worried that they're going to perhaps lose the flexibility that they've had during lockdown and are worried about things to do with childcare and all manner of things that perhaps may have been made a little bit easier during lockdown. But yeah, I think it's probably huge. And I think if a lot of companies are sort of waiting for that sort of June deadline of the end of June, they're probably still processing what that could potentially look like.
Yeah. That's something that we're going to discuss today, rather than waiting, how do we approach this in a proactive way?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people's emotions that they've shared in the chat box echo that. There was lots. They all come in pretty quick, guys. Mixed emotions I kept seeing, like the first day of school, mixed emotions for different people. As we said, it isn't going to be a one size fits all for sure. Lots of people feel anxious, uncertain. I saw one, there was Anna Ferguson, worried about lockdown puppies, which made me laugh a little bit. But yeah, there's definitely, like we say, difficult situations that employees will be experiencing. And I think as an organization, HR, you can't just expect every employee to be feeling a certain way. That chat box, as we've just seen and what you've kind of highlighted, it's going to be very individual to all, right? And employees are going to fear returning to an unsafe environment. Employees are going to fear the commute potentially. Those that might not even have struggled with social anxiety in the past might still be feeling a little bit anxiety around the commute and how safe it is. And equally, it's a brand new experience, right? For a lot of them for a long time. Anxious about mixing with people again, separation anxiety from the home, from children, from lockdown puppies, as we've seen. Separation anxiety, again, is emotions that are going to be experienced as we transition back into the workplace. Changes to a job role or ways of working and the results of new practice being adopted. This morning I delivered a 2-hour workshop on resilience, and a lot of that speaks about change, right? How do you manage change and deal with change and embrace change? And I think a lot of employees will struggle with that, and equally losing the increased flexibility which was in place during lockdown. So there's lots of emotions that can come with this. And I think just to highlight the importance of this session today, no one said the same answer, right? No one just said they're going to be anxious, they're going to be anxious, they're going to be anxious. Everyone was sharing something different. And we have to look at this in a very individual way. Equally, there's a duty of care. And Zoe, I'll leave this up to you because this is definitely more in your court. But employees obviously have a duty of care, right? To look at this in a proactive way.
Yeah, and I think so many other things sort of come into the mix here, don't they? So obviously your normal duty of care around health and safety at work, under normal circumstances, you'd be doing, risk assessments that cover, the work environment and display screen equipment and all of that good stuff, or it might be manual handling or something to do with equipment if you're perhaps in a factory or a warehouse. But I think hybrid or blended working, whatever we end up calling it, is going to throw up so many new questions around, well, actually, what's our duty of care in the home? Just because those employees are at home doesn't mean that duty of care disappears. And as we all know, everybody's going to be different, and what is good in inverted commas for one employee may not necessarily be good for somebody else. So I think keeping up those conversations and making sure that dialogue is had around, are there any reasonable adjustments that might be required? If somebody is going to remain working at home maybe for 3 days a week, are they set up correctly? Have they got a decent chair? Have they got a decent desk? They're not sort of sitting cross-legged on a couch or whatever. Because although we might have let that slide a bit during lockdown, I think going forward, particularly the health and safety executive, and if any audits are carried out, I think that the onus is obviously going to be on sort of HR and health and safety teams to make sure that all of that is in place. And then you put the mental health lens on top of it all, and it's obviously a huge topic that needs to be covered, and it's not going to be fixed overnight. I suspect that these issues are going to go on for a number of weeks, probably months, whilst we navigate through how do we actually make this work, and how do we involve employees and make sure that all those choices aren't taken away from them. Because I think somebody said in the chat box before around, that element of choice and where people work, and do they feel safe? Do they feel safe commuting? Do they want more, literally more flexibility, or want to retain that flexibility? Unless you have those conversations, we're guessing really, aren't we, in trying to fill the gaps?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be done. And as ever, a lot of that falls on HR's shoulders, doesn't it? Unfortunately.
Yeah, you know that too well, right? And I think you touched on that, which was that proactive over reactive approach. And what a lot of employees will do is they'll just wait until an issue arises. So when we return back to work, we'll do what we need to do, and then we'll wait until an issue arises. And I think this is, definitely most common when it comes to mental health and well-being, in the fact that so many employees will, neglect responsibility of mental health of their employees because they don't feel like they have a mental health problem. They'll only then do something about it when there is a crisis situation, when there's something that they have to react to, right? And I think, what we're going to be highlighting in just a minute with these 5 ways that you as HR can minimize employee anxiety is you have to do it in a proactive way, right? You have to do it in a proactive way. Let's do it as early as possible so we can avoid situations from potentially arising, specifically in the long run. And that's what we're really all about is that proactive approach. And you can almost learn from the strategy that you've probably heard me talk about before, which is the 3P strategy, which for us is the strategy that we help employers with when it comes to mental health in the workplace. Lots of them will implement different tools and different initiatives, but they won't have any strategy behind it. And I think this here is a great example of that, in the fact that if we can promote positive conversations, if we can try to provide tools and solutions to help minimize employee anxiety as we return back to work, in the reality of it, we're hopefully having less people that we need to protect, that we're then reacting to, that might be in that crisis situation. So it's about trying to take a more proactive approach to this, guys. And again, as we say, we're going to be diving into that from now. So 5 ways that you as HR, or you within an organization that wants to support your employees, can obviously do to minimize employee anxiety. A proactive approach, not a reactive approach. So what we're going to do with these guys is we're going to highlight each way. Me and Zoe will then sort of share our own opinions of them. However, I want you to blow up the chat box in terms of your opinions. You're all experts here as well. So we want to hear from you in terms of what you're doing or what you've done in the past with your business that can help us with each of these ways as well. And hopefully that will help others too. So the first way that we're looking at, the first tip, is to be clear with any communications and set expectations as early as possible. Now, a lot of the work that we do specifically with employees is trying to gather some insight and data into how they're feeling. And what we've sort of seen is employees are feeling uncertain. Employees don't have clarity on, as Zoe said, what does the workplace look like? How is that going to change? What's the commute going to be like? how am I going to interact with my employees? Some people started a new job in lockdown and have never met anyone. So again, there's lots of uncertainty and anxiety. And what we need to do as employers is be clear with our communications, to set expectations as early as possible, and really to kind of lead authentically, right? And I think in terms of when you're looking at a roadmap, ensuring that timeline, that roadmap for you as an organization has been made clear. You've obviously got the government roadmap that everyone's kind of sticking to. However, when it comes to your own roadmap as a business, your own timeline, it's going to be unique to you. We work with many companies in different industries, and I think some people have seen some are always working, right? Not much has changed in terms of them going to work as we normally would in the physical sense, whereas there's other organizations that have adopted a work from home model, and they're actually now questioning, do I need an office? Do we need to adopt, everyone working back into the office as well? So create your own roadmap, create your own timeline, and communicate that in the best way as you possibly can to your employees, so they're all clear with the expectations as well. And the final point for me, and then Zoe will jump in and we'll share some of your points. I think encourage business leaders to share openly and honestly about how they're feeling about this. It's important that we empower employees to be open and honest about how they're feeling. But I think when we encourage business leaders to talk about the experiences they've had, or the emotions that they're feeling, the anxiety that they're feeling going back into the workplace, it can set that tone for the rest of the employees to feel more comfortable to do so as well. So I think as HR, as a company, the more clear you can be with your communications, the quicker you can set expectations for your employees, the less uncertainty they're going to feel. Zoe, what have you got to add on?
I would echo a couple of the points there that Georgie and Chantal just made around, employee surveys and literally gauging, what they're thinking, because I guess it's a two-way thing, isn't it? I mean, I've sort of call it, reducing the unknowns. I think in the absence of clarity, people tend to fill the gaps themselves, don't they? And I think you may not have all the answers at the moment. You may not have a perfect roadmap for opening up and, a perfect sort of solution for hybrid working or agile working, whatever that might look like. But I think you need to take steps, don't you, to elicit that information, get some feedback, and then start to engage with employees around, how could we make it work? We know it's not going to be perfect. We know it's going to be probably iterated over the next 6 months, but we need to start somewhere. And I think if you've got opinions, if you've got a mechanism for trying to, trying to compromise, really, you're not going to please absolutely everybody. We know that. But I think if you can make inroads into making sure that roadmap is at least communicated, has some proximate dates on it, that you look at capacity planning, you look at ways of working around meetings, and if you normally have huge face-to-face meetings, clearly that's not going to necessarily work going forward. So just almost like rules of engagement, isn't it, really, around how do we think things are going to work around here going forward, and if we were to adopt those types of principles, what would people's concerns be around that? And it's literally going back and forth, isn't it, until you land on something that you think, do you know what, we can trial this now. It's not perfect, but let's see how we get on. But yeah, it's going to be an iterative process, I think, definitely.
Yeah, and I think I want to echo what Suzanne said. She said Survey HR rang all staff at home with a one-to-one, getting individual concerns prior to the roadmap, looked at individuals' circumstances. We had a weekly CEO email with what's changing. The CEO is clear with what is on offer. Most are excited to be returning hybrid working, and done another survey on how they're feeling. We'll talk about this more later, but that check-in should not be neglected. Instead of us as HR, as an organization, guessing what our employees feel and guessing what they want, we have to get some data back in terms of how they're feeling. A client that we work with, they had an individual, it wasn't HR, just reach out to as many employees as possible, jump on a quick Zoom call with them, ask them how they're feeling, collated their thoughts anonymously, shared it with HR, shared it with the senior management team, and was like, here's how your employees are feeling, here's how we're feeling. And that was so insightful for the business to then make their own roadmap, to make their own decisions based upon how they were going to return to the work and minimize employee anxiety. So it's, surveys are kind of, as we say, often overlooked, and, we're not always going to get everyone answering them, but there's other ways that we can do that. As we say, can we embed anonymous polling via a sort of session that we do? Whatever it is, try and get as much feedback as possible, and then use that in terms of planning out your roadmap as well. So do you want to take number 2?
Yeah, so, around sort of providing continued guidance and ensuring reasonable adjustments are considered there. I think, we've got to try and smooth this transition as much as possible. We know there's going to be heightened anxiety. We know that people are going to have, 1,000,001 questions around their ways of working, around their patterns, around flexibility, that type of thing. That they might even have questions around, has my job role changed in any way, or will it be because of a return to the workplace? So I think making sure that you've got all the health and safety side boxed off, and that's one sort of area to minimize the anxiety. But then all the other sort of questions they might have around, can I flex my start and finish times, for example? Can I retain some of that flexibility that I've had during lockdown? Because actually going back into the workplace and working, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, that is just not going to work for all these reasons. And so, again, having those well-being check-ins and just having that conversation. I mean, if you're a company with thousands and thousands of employees, obviously that one-to-one is going to be a far more difficult exercise to pull off. It's not impossible, because obviously you'll have line managers and you'll have everybody that could sort of share that burden. But I think as much as possible, getting that information and then turning that into action around, what can we do with flexibility? What can we do? What can we do to almost like head off, 1,000,001 formal flexible working requests? Because I think what you don't want is to be on the back foot with an influx of those type requests and people saying, I need an adjustment here or I need flexibility there. If you can head that off and almost be proactive in sort of saying, well, we know that flexibility is going to be a problem. How can we deal with it? Can we work in a more agile way and sort of build in that remote working, and as long as we've got the health and safety implications sorted, and we've got some really good comms, some really good check-in practices, we can trial it, and I think that's all you can sort of agree to at the moment, isn't it? It's new for everyone, and anything that you put in place, it could be with the caveat that you'll trial it over a period of a few months and just see if it works, because I guess ultimately it's got to work operationally, hasn't it? You can wrap all this support around the employees. You can have as many well-being check-ins. You can be as flexible and supportive as possible. But ultimately, if that doesn't work for the business and sort of the commerciality and operational requirements, it's got to be addressed. It's got to work for both, hasn't it? So you've got to have that sort of commercial lens on it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely steps that could be taken.
And I think, just to echo what Zoe said there as well, it's understanding that this plan that you're creating, the proactive strategies that you're going to put in place, it's very rare that it's going to be 100% right. But it's about how you adapt to that, how you learn from that. Put a no in the chat box and be honest if what you've done during this whole pandemic period has been 100% right. Put no if you haven't done everything right. Because again, when you're looking at that, lots of no's coming in, and it's good to see, because we're all humans, we're all going to make mistakes, but what's important is we're going to learn from that. So that roadmap that we create is going to be something that we feel, with the data that we have, with the education that we have, with the sign off from senior leaders that we have, is going to be the best option. However, there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be stuff that we might have to adapt to, and it's being able to provide that continued guidance throughout the way as well. So definitely when it comes to this, there's a lot of key points that was coming in too. For me, it's about knowing that you are going to have to adapt. You're going to have to continue to listen. And I think when you're looking at surveys, and Zoe's got more experience in this than I have, when you're looking at surveys, don't just do a survey now, get some data, and then forget about another survey. Continuously trying to engage with your employees, like you say, whether it's check-ins, whether it's surveys, whatever it is, have conversations with them to find out how they're feeling throughout this transition back. and continue to adapt and evolve from there as well. We had this one, Zoe, which you'd like, but EEs expect HR to have all the answers.
But we know everything, don't we? Obviously. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough because, you know, a lot of us are probably generalists. I mean, I'm certainly a generalist, but yeah, you're absolutely right. We are expected to know everything about everything and put in place a perfect people solution, which it doesn't exist. So yeah, I would, you know, if it were me, I'd be sort of almost like having a caveat that, you know, we're in uncharted waters now, aren't we? You know, we have to trial things, but as a business, we are not. You know, we cannot give a cast iron commitment now that everything will remain the same. We have to trial it. We have to see if it works operationally, and we have to, you know, flex those requirements. And you might have to pivot if it doesn't work. You know, ultimately, the business has got to be successful, has got to be able to carry out all its goals and objectives. And if those ways of working aren't working for the business, then something has to be done about that. It can't just be one-sided. So it's getting that balance right.
Yeah, for sure. Sharon says, good point. Surveys fall short if you do not feed the information back to employees and explain what we can and cannot do and why. Yeah, we had, you know, again, when you're looking at surveys and that kind of information being fed back, employees will sit there and say, right, what are you going to do about it now? And it's about that, you know, as we say, that clear communication as well. The third tip, apologies, the third tip is further management training as well. And there was a question that come in about how do we get senior leaders to be more flexible, right? And this point will hopefully touch on that as well. But for me, when you're looking at management training, the way we look at promote, provide, protect is, for a lot of organizations, they go, when it comes to mental health, top down. Let's train our managers, because then if they're equipped to deal with difficult conversations, to spot signs, etc., everyone who's a direct contact to them is going to be able to be supported. Now, what they forget is that promote side, which is addressing stigma, empowering all employees, whether you're a manager or not, to speak openly about mental health. You know, just because my manager is equipped with some training on mental health does not change the fact that I don't feel comfortable talking to him or her. So it's really about creating more of an open culture. Now, when it comes to further management training for this, I think it could be doing some training with line managers to look at how do you notice anxiety at work? How can you spot the signs? Equally, what we do sessions on is knowing your responsibility. How do you, as a line manager, have more confidence to know if one of my colleagues is struggling, to have confidence to ask, to have confidence to listen, and then more importantly, know where to signpost that person to further support them. So I think some training around that will be very, you know, important to help employees that might be dealing with anxiety as they transition back as well. I think as well, it's also making sure that your senior leaders, your business leaders are educated and supported themselves as well. Coming back to that question of how do I get a senior leader to buy into flexibility and well-being? It's a difficult question. However, I believe education is the key. You know, senior leader or not, they're a human being. And if we can phrase this in a human way, they might see it in a different way. Whenever I'm doing talks on mental health, especially with senior leaders, if you come at it from a very mental health place, their association with mental health is something that they might not want to discuss. They might want to be put off by. However, when you come at it from a human place, you know, they've all got emotions. They all have faced different, you know, challenges in their own experiences in their own life, and we have to educate them to see it in a different way. So I think education and doing sessions with them is massively important as well. You know, resilience training, giving them the tools to help themselves and help others is massively important as well. But yeah, for me, Zoe, with management training, it's purely education, equipping them with the tools to be able to support their teams as well.
Yeah, and I think it's I've noticed it's often a confidence thing as well. You sort of think if you're, you know, very high up in the organization, you know, you're a director that's been doing this type of thing for like 20 years or whatever. I think it's almost like, you know, sometimes a perception that, you know, you are able to handle anything from a leadership perspective that's thrown at you. But as you've quite rightly put, you know, mental health and well-being is a serious topic, and they're not experts. You know, they're not medical practitioners. They're not sort of health and safety experts. So they need to be educated, trained, coached. You know, whatever that is, to give them the confidence to even have those preliminary conversations. You know, we're not saying that they're going to be an expert overnight, but things like spotting the signs, you know, having that, you know, self-awareness and resilience themselves can just support in having those conversations. And it's just taking the first steps, isn't it? It's not going to all fall into place overnight, but just having those wellbeing check-ins and having the confidence to be able to say, you know, well, I know I can spot some signs. I know I can sort of offer, you know, almost like a friendly ear. I can signpost. I know where to go to if I need additional support or external, you know, tools or information. So I think it's just equipping them, isn't it, to have that confidence?
Yeah, for sure. We had someone ask where they could get some training like this. Feel free to reach out. We deliver resilience training, resilience workshops, senior management training, looking at mental health, as long as other webinars and sessions. And then also had Val, who says that they went through our champion course, which is a free course. Again, we'll link up to that after this session, and said that our senior management team went through the course and it was well received. So for me, it's really about the education piece when it comes to managers and equipping them with the right tools. And that will help minimize employee anxiety as we move back. Policies, procedures, and revisiting risk assessment. Zoe, I'm leaving. This is not in my court. This is in your court.
Yeah, our lovely friend, the policy and everything. I think, yeah, no, from an HR perspective, this is like the serious side, isn't it? And although a lot of HR professionals probably want to, you know, chuck the handbook or whatever out the window and have something far more flexible, I think unfortunately when you're dealing with health and safety and you've got, you know, potential claims or tribunals or anything looming because you haven't perhaps handled things, I think it's you need to be in a good place, don't you, to be able to cross the I's and dot the T. Cross the T's and dot the I's and have that audit trail so that if something does happen. And I think that's where, you know, we touched on it before about, you know, home working and health and safety and flexibility. And, you know, I suspect that there will be an influx of formal flexible working requests. And I think it's just, you know, is your model set up to cope with that? You know, you're not under any obligation to agree to them all, obviously, but you are under an obligation to review them, you know, look at the categories, look at are there any alternatives, are there any options or compromises that you could reach so that you do give a formal response to that. So I think if you're proactive in looking, okay, well, how could flexibility work? How could agile or remote working or a hybrid approach work? How could we build that into our model? So I think absolutely look at, you know, look at that first before you get inundated with those requests. And I think on the more serious side of, you know, making sure that those risk assessments have been done. We obviously I think it was last month, wasn't it, Paul, that we advertised the mental wellbeing risk assessment that we pulled together. And I think from a health and safety perspective, that is a generic assessment that could be used. So if anybody is looking to revisit their types of risk assessments, so this wouldn't be appropriate for, you know, again, looking at, you know, I don't know, manual handling or those types of physical risks. But from a well-being perspective, this is definitely a document that you could use to really look through your, you know, your practices, your culture, your sort of training, your comms, etc., and make sure that you've got measures in place that would mitigate those types of mental health risks. I mean, I personally spoke to, you know, health and safety specialists around this and really drilled down into, you know, from a health and safety exec perspective, would this cover us? We know that duty of care talks about mitigating stress, but the feedback that I got and the research that we did was very much around, you need a risk assessment to make sure it covers all those generic elements, not just stress, because we obviously know that there's so many other you know, challenges that individuals have. And I think if you do something like this, it's really, I guess it's your working document to be able to safely say, you know, we've tried to mitigate every possible risk. We've tried to put in as many supportive measures as possible. So I'd definitely have a look at that. Have a look at your home working policy. We touched on that before. You know, if individuals are going to carry on working from home, Is that safe? Is it conducive to, to working 7 or 8 hours a day? Have they got the correct equipment, etc.? Don't assume that they're sort of out of sight, out of mind, because we've still got that duty of care, and we still have to adhere to all of that. Yeah. So, yeah, probably quite a bit of work to do there. I just noticed someone, Paul, was asking about downloading the risk assessment.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of people come in there. Yeah, so we've got the workplace mental wellbeing risk assessment, as Zoe mentioned. Again, I think Sam is going to be inundated, but Sam, if you can link up to it. Leslie has already. You're probably going to crash the website again, guys. However, Leslie's commented it there, and Sam's going to do it as well. It's just everymindатwork.com/free-risk-assessment. And you can just go and download that for free. So there's some good feedback coming in as well, which is really good to see, Zoe, in terms of people using it and saying it was really good. And it's been sort of helpful as well. So yeah, guys, it's another free resource if you want to download that and use it too. I just quickly, I won't share anything on this because this is way out of my comfort zone to talk about policies. However, there was a comment that I want to read from Emma that said, I see policies and procedures as a huge benefit if done well. They protect and enhance both EE and ERs, right? So again, when you're, Zoe, explain EE and ERs, because
yeah, well, I mean, obviously, ultimately, ultimately, you want to try and mitigate, any issues that you might have, be that, I don't know, bullying and harassment, respect at work, that type of thing. I mean, we all know that sort of, equality, diversity and inclusion and are such massive important topics at the moment. So, we need to have things in place to protect employees, but also from an employee relations, ER side of things, we need to make sure that we're protected as well. So although policies can sometimes appear a bit punitive and a bit, and I guess it's all in the style and how you write them, and they can be softened to sort of link in with your culture and how you'd normally be talking to employees. But yeah, unfortunately, whilst we have a culture of sort of litigation and employees perhaps not being happy about things, you can try and be a supportive and have a really, really supportive culture. But ultimately, if something happens that's perhaps beyond your control, or somebody's subjected to, bullying or harassment or that type of thing, you need to have a procedure in place to protect them, and so that they know that they can raise that in confidence, and they feel, I guess that they feel as though they have a support mechanism in place. And can use the procedure that is available to them.
So there you go, guys. I'm learning as well. We've got people in the chat box telling me what it means. But yeah, I think it's a really valid point. As you say, when you're looking at policies, it's there to protect you, and it's equally there to kind of, help you navigate a lot of these more difficult subjects as well. Finally, before we move on to tip 5, I don't know about you, Zoe, but I love the fact that everyone's kind of sharing ideas and resources.
Yeah, that's great.
I know from the Ninjas group, and I'm sure Zoe will echo this from her experience, HR can kind of feel, I guess, quite lonely, and sometimes you can feel, what's the word? Imposter syndrome, right? Where you're being tasked with loads, and sometimes you feel like you're having to deal with all that on your own. So like a thankless task, Georgie explains it, overwhelmed, Amanda explains it. So yeah, just seeing everyone kind of share their own opinions, and equally as well share different resources, is really, really good to see as well. Yeah. So the final go on.
It's probably the most challenging year though, Paul, isn't it? I suspect that 2020 was probably the most challenging year of anyone's career, I reckon.
Yeah.
So I think if they can get through that, they can get through anything.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. So the final point, culture and conversations. So again, this is something that we do a lot in terms of the work that we do with the organizations that we work with, is how do we create a new culture? How do we empower employees to feel like they can be open and honest about how they're feeling? Because when we're talking about getting data, doing check-ins, finding out what employees want. None of that works if you have a very negative, judgmental, silent culture and there's no conversations allowed to be had. So I think it's empowering employees to kind of challenge those stigmas, to share their own stories, to share the emotions that they've experienced. And again, I've seen it happen time and time and time again. We really believe in the method of champions, getting champions in the business. So mental health and well-being doesn't just come from HR, right? It comes from employees sharing their own story and championing it as well. And if we can empower those employees to do so, it will have a massive impact on removing those barriers, that stigma that surrounds mental health. Conversations with check-ins, they should be done more often, but equally, instead of performance reviews, we should be looking at how do we implement check-ins in terms of mental health and well-being to find out how employees are feeling. And I think when we're looking at stigma as a whole, it is just about, the way I explain it is, mental health stigma in the workplace is this huge brick wall, and you're stood there with a tiny little kid's hammer, right? One of those little plastic hammers, and you're just knocking away at this wall, and you're chipping away at it and chipping away at it and chipping away at it and chipping away at it. And I saw someone say earlier, one of the tips that they gave was comms, comms, comms. Like the more you chip away at it, the more employees start to share, the more comms you send, the more training you do. With time, that culture will start to change. So I think this, for me, and I'm going to be biased here, Zoe, is one of the most important ones, because how can we look at reducing employee anxiety if we don't make employees feel safe to talk about their anxiety? It just amplifies the problem. I've been there as well. So yeah, definitely, if you're looking at how do you address culture and conversations, that's going to help in itself. Zoe, what would you add to this?
Yeah, and I mean, in some of the research that we did, I was quite shocked to find that a stat was quoting that 25% of I think it was a couple of thousand employees that took place in a CIPD poll said that they hadn't received a single wellbeing check-in during the whole of lockdown. And I just thought that was shocking. So you like to think that those comms and those conversations would be in place, but that is a bit of a snapshot. Okay, it's only a certain amount of people, but a quarter of those people said that they didn't receive anything. And I sort of think if we learn anything from all of this, it's the importance of that sort of connectivity, isn't it? And having those conversations and checking in on people and just supporting that sort of reduction in stigma. And because, as you say, if people don't feel safe and they don't feel as if they're going to be supported, then they're not going to have the confidence to speak up. I just saw somebody in the chat box then saying about their CEO sharing their own experience. That can be so powerful. I mean, we've had that on the app, haven't we, Paul, where there've been personal stories of sort of leaders, in the company, and it's just a little bit of an icebreaker and just gives them confidence. For those of you that follow a guy called Ollie Magnus on LinkedIn, he's fabulous at that. I don't know whether anybody follows him, but he shares stuff and he's so vulnerable, and he's got a huge following now. But it just shows the power and in sort of leading by example, I guess, and showing that vulnerability, because it makes it okay for other people to do it. So and it supports that culture as well. The culture is huge, and that's probably one of the most difficult things to change. And again, it's not going to happen overnight, but you've just got to take small steps, haven't you, and hope that it makes inroads.
Yeah, and I think with this one, the reason why I strongly believe employers have ignored it is because there's no golden ticket, right, to create a better culture. So what I mean by that is there's no, I think someone said it, there's no one size fits all. There's no quick fix. It is purely just building momentum. And a lot of it comes down to those more simplistic human approaches that we can take. Leslie said she's heard lots of horror stories about people being told you're on furlough last month and literally having nothing from their employer since. And also when you're looking at kind of, as we said, that negative culture and that judgment and me feeling very silent and I have to deal with this on my own, it makes it more difficult. So I would highly say, if you're looking to improve this, lots of you are saying it, try and get stories, whether it's the CEO, whether it's an employee. Fran says they use a story sharing in their employee bulletin. We're hosting a session with one of our clients on Mental Health Awareness Week that launches the resilience training that we're doing, which has their employees, their employees that I'm facilitating, but it's on them. It's them sharing their own experiences and what they see resilience is and times they've had to be resilient. So it's making it employee-led, and I feel like that has a massive impact on changing culture too. So lots and lots of chats coming in, which is good to see. And we're going to be opening up the questions in just a minute. But just to quickly go through important things to remember, guys, flexibility is key. Remember the areas such as flexibility go hand in hand with well-being. Talk to employees, find out what might help them. Again, flexibility in terms of, can you give a little bit more leeway in terms of when I go back to the office, because I still want to do the school run in the mornings or whatever it is. If we just have this blanket one size fits all approach, it's going to not help some people. I also saw someone talk about extroverts before. There's this almost, the extroverts will be fine because they'll come back to the office and all will be okay. But still, that's it's too simplistic if you're looking at it like that. We have to offer flexibility and freedom, because that's going to really, really benefit employees. You're never going to be able to please everyone. Again, that's something I think to remember, but just try and take those small positive steps in the right direction. So again, the roadmap that you're going to create, the ideas that you're going to come up with, you're not going to please everyone. But however, as long as you feel like it's the best thing to do, and like we've said, adapt and learn to change over the time, just do your best. That's all we can really do. And that's all we've been doing for the last 18 months or whatever. Encourage the use of wellbeing and wellness action plans and wellbeing check-ins. Again, don't make those, wellbeing check-ins go overlooked. It's very simple. It's free. Doesn't cost anything. It's just embedding it in the right places. And finally, gathering data from your employees, constantly listening to them, constantly finding out how you can better the support and adapting to that. Don't just come up with a solution that you feel is right or the business feels is right without listening to your employees, the people that are experiencing this anxiety, experiencing those emotions. And that data is really, really key as well. So when it comes to that, guys, what we've done is we've given some more free stuff, and Sam's putting loads of free stuff in there. And what we've done is we've created a HR guide called How to Help Employees Who Are Anxious to Return to the Workplace. This is a PDF for you, which gives you some more suggestions and more tips off the back of today's sessions, which you can go through. It's a PDF that you can go through, and it's going to give you some advice as well. Now, we're going to be sending that out tomorrow to everyone who's attended this session. However, if you don't want to wait, just drop Paul M at everymindatwork.com an email. You can see it there. Paul M at everymindatwork.com an email. And what we're going to do is we're going to send you that guide. Like I say, we will send it to everyone tomorrow. However, if you want it today, send that and we'll send it to you. We'll attach it to the email. Also, I'm going to give you something else. We also have created some free materials to send your employees. So we want to make your job a little bit easier. So what we've done is we've created these 2 graphics that you can attach to comms for all of your employees, which are also going to potentially help as well. One of them is getting back into the routine when returning to work. And you can kind of see there, it's a 10 sort of step process, just some advice for them to have. And then we also have another image is returning to work and how to manage that anxiety. So whether it's speak to your manager, speak to a trusted colleague, go easy on yourself. These are just emotions that we're experiencing. Everyone's kind of feeling the same way. So not only are we giving you something for you that can hopefully help you, but here's something that you can obviously grab, send to your employees in an email, via Slack, whatever you do to communicate to them. And hopefully that's going to help as well. So email Paul M at everymindatwork.com. We'll get them sent over to you as soon as possible, but equally look at your inbox tomorrow. We'll send a replay to this session. And also we'll send all of these resources as well. So it looks like they've gone down well, which is good to see. And I have to also say that I'm very grateful for my team who have put all these resources together. So good stuff. So one last thing that I do want to highlight, and then we'll also take some questions, is because this is a very difficult subject, and there's lots that we've gone through in today's session, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed of what do we do next. What we're also doing is creating a return to workplace package, which we've started to roll out into some organizations as well. And the idea of this is to find out where your employees are struggling and then create personalized wellbeing support for them. And with this package, what we're actually doing is, for the first thing that we'll do is we'll do a short session with your employees, and we'll find out where they're struggling the most. So we'll run a 30-minute session, a live session where I'll come in, I'll share my story, come in on Zoom or Teams or however you want me to do it. I'll share my story, and then I'll encourage employees to anonymously vote and tell me how they're feeling. It's a simple way of doing it. We use something called Mentimeter. You might have seen it before. And it's an anonymous way of finding out how are your employees feeling. By me being vulnerable, by sharing my own story, it equally as well encourages them to do so as well. Then what we'll then do is take that data that's specific to you as a business. We'll chat with you. We'll use our business psychologists on our team to look at that data. And then what we'll do is we'll suggest some sessions for you. We'll run a further 2 wellbeing sessions that are online. And again, the topics will depend upon the data. It could be resilience, it could be goal setting, it could be sleep, it could be mindfulness, it could be managing mental health, it could be having conversations about mental health. You know, there's so many sessions that we now run, but that will be dictated by the data that we get from that first session. So what you're going to be getting with this is the 30-minute discovery webinar, which is the interactive session where I'll come in, I'll share my story, and I'll encourage others to do so as well anonymously. Then we'll do a 60-minute personalized webinar on one of those topics that we've already mentioned based upon the data. Then we'll run a further 60-minute personalized session for your organization. So it's a free session approach. We can do it across a month depending on how you want to do it. And when it comes to this, the normal cost for this is £1,300. But if you contact us today, we'll do it for £800. So £800 to find out that data, for us to manage that, for our business psychologists to be able to give you some feedback on that and how you can better support them return to work. And then we'll deliver 2 future sessions to keep them engaged and keep them supported. And we'll manage that all for you as well to save you that little bit of time too. So when it comes to these sessions, another thing to note is it will also be recorded. You can share that recording internally. So if you don't feel like everyone's going to attend them, we'll record the session, send it to you, and you can share it internally, keep it there for people to see. Friends asked the question as well, how many staff can you have on the webinar at one time? Our limit is 500. So you can have up to 500 employees on that session at one time. And we keep them engaged, as I say, in an interactive way, an anonymous way, to try and get that feedback and that data as well. So like I say, those sessions, it could be sleep, it could be resilience, it could be mindfulness. You know, there's so much that we deliver. But for us, it's about making sure that it's what your employees want. That's the kind of approach that we take as well. So that's something that obviously you can reach out to us to find out more about in terms of who we've helped and sessions that we've delivered and, you know, our companies that we partner with. There's a couple here, you know, whether it's Accenture, Waits, Julius Baer, GB Rail Freight, they're a lot of our clients. Equally, I've done talks personally in Lloyd's TSB, Deloitte, Warner Brothers, Baker and McKenzie. So really just trying to help more and more organizations. Doesn't matter your size. If that's something that you think is going to be beneficial for you, then just reach out. All you need to do for that is, again, just drop paulm@everymindatwork.com an email and let us know that you're interested in that package. And then we can make that happen for you as well. And again, our focus is that partnership, not to just be a service provider. We actually want to make real change. It's very purpose driven what we do. We know that one size doesn't fit all. And equally, we know that you have very little time on your hands. So we try and do as much as we can to take that off your hands, but still support your employees as well. If you can't confirm today, no worries. Just get back to me as soon as you possibly can, and that offer will stand. The earlier you can obviously get in touch, the better, because typically they'll fill up quite quickly as well. So if you can't confirm today because of everything that you've got going on, just reach out, let us know you're interested, and we'll take care of that for you as well. So what I want you to do now, guys, is put in the chat box, what will you do after this session to help your employees manage the anxiety returning to work? Lots that we've gone through, but equally, what's the one thing that you're going to do after this session to help your employees manage the anxiety returning to work? Sorry, what's the main one for you? What would you say is the most important one?
I would say communicate and be proactive about any changes. I think even if you've not got the full story, just communicate so that, you know, that the teams know that you're working on it and they know that more information will be to follow.
Yeah, nice. And lots of people saying communicate, keep conversations going, honesty. And one thing I love about communication, and lots of people forget this, is communication is listening as well, right? So, it's about what we're communicating, but at the same time, it's listening to our employees, communicating, and continuing that conversation on as well. So yeah, lots of people saying that they're going to do something specific after this session, which is really, really positive to see. Now, there's so many people on here this session. However, do any of you have any questions that you want to ask either myself or Zoe? It could be related to this topic, could be related to mental health in the workplace. Have you got any questions? Put them in the chat box if you have. We've got a couple more minutes. Can I come and work with you?
What would you like to do?
Drop me an email, Joe. Drop me an email. Happy to chat for sure. Do you run mental health first aid training? We do. We have trusted partners that deliver mental health first aid training. So if you want to get in touch about that, we're happy to run that for you. Equally, what we do a little bit different from other providers is we focus on the aftercare and the after support. So, yes, here's how you can equip mental health first aiders into the business. We can run the 2-day course. However, the advice that we then give and the strategic partnership we then have is how do you embed those in the right way so they're not just dormant in the business and no one's reaching out to them. So yes, if you want to find out more about that, then definitely reach out. What education do you recommend we get for ourselves? Sherry, is that about mental health in particular? Sorry, just if you can elaborate. How do you address the issues of senior leaders talking the talk but not walking the walk? What do you think of that one, Zoe?
Do you know what? You just have to keep on chipping away, don't you? I mean, some companies, will literally hardwire in, well-being objectives and stuff like that. That's a little bit, that's a little bit stick, isn't it? But you've got to get them to buy into it, haven't you? Ultimately, you could be really prescriptive and say, right, we're going to build, into your objectives. We're going to build in well-being check-ins. We're going to build in our engagement survey. We're going to see what your scores are. But that is very much, stick. I would say try the sort of carrot first with the buy-in and selling the benefits of it, and almost like a softer approach to look at what it could do for your engagement, your improvement in absenteeism, improvement in productivity. I think in selling those benefits to leaders and really getting to the crux of how can it benefit you and your teams, and doing it in a positive way. And eventually, if it doesn't work, I guess you could be more directive with, well, you're going to be measured on this now, but I think it'd be nicer to do it in a softer way.
Yeah, I think it's such a hard question because everyone's different, aren't they? But I think like chip away to try and educate them in different ways, try and communicate with them in different ways as well. All of that will hopefully help them start to realize the importance of it. Someone says, great session, one of the better ones I've seen on this topic. Appreciate that. Do you do anything about prevention rather than recognizing or aftercare? Laura, can you elaborate on that? Do anything about prevention rather than recognizing or aftercare? Any tips on persuading senior leaders to share their journeys? They still don't have the confidence to share. Emily, I think if you can encourage one of them to do so, then great. One of the ways that I found that works effectively is get someone external to come in and share their story. Vulnerability is quite contagious. So what I mean by that is I've found in the past when I share my story, it encourages 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or whatever others to then share their story, and then that has the same domino effect of then encouraging others to do the same. So maybe someone external to come in and share. That sounds like I'm just plugging me, which I'm not, but you can you can use an employee if you want. It's entirely up to you. However, I think if they don't feel confident to do so, then it's difficult. But yeah, it's just for me, senior leaders is just they're all human beings. We just have to figure out a way of getting to the human side of them, and then getting them to kind of be a bit more open about it as well. Cool. I just want to come back to those. Emma says, what's your email address? paulm@everymindatwork.com. I really want to get to the questions that I said I'll come back to, but guys, I don't know whether we're going to have time to finish them up. However, if you do have any specific questions, like I say, you can email me at any time, and I'm happy to answer those questions in an email as well. In terms of, as I say, the free comms or anything that you need, my email is there, paulm@everymindatwork.com. If you want the return to work package, again, reach out and then we can take care of that for you in terms of organizing the sessions, making it happen. As I say, the normal cost for that is £1,300, but for £800, if you get in contact as soon as possible, we'll make that happen. Lots and lots of comments coming in, which is really good to see. We'll be running another session next month. Which again, if you're signed up to this session, then you'll hopefully be automatically reminded to join next month's session. So first Wednesday at 1 p.m. of every month, and we'll let you know what the topic of is that next session as well. We'll be sending out the replay tomorrow. We'll be sending out the resources. We'll be sending out all of the free stuff that we've mentioned. So you should get that in an email tomorrow. But just from me, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. Any parting words from you, Zoe?
Yeah, no, just thanks. It's great to see so many people join, and and a big shout out to the HR Ninjas as well, which is taking over the world at the moment, isn't it? So nice to see so many of you there too. So yeah, thanks for joining, guys, and have a great rest of your week.
Special shout out to Sam as well. Lots of people saying thanks to Sam, because Sam was on there to share the links when he wasn't asked to share the link. So
bless.
Sam as well. Well done, Sam. So thank you guys for joining, and hopefully we'll see you all in next month's session. But like I say, I'll be emailing you tomorrow with a replay, and looking forward to hopefully hearing from some of you as well. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. All right, speak soon.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye.